Over Gordon Freeman's traversal of a Combine-controlled Earth, he met many interesting members of a strong resistance who all had the same goal: to remove the Combine Empire from their planet. Within the small community of New Little Odessa, he met a man that had a pretty interesting backstory. Yet, this backstory, his accent and actions were believed by those around him to be false or exaggerated to a degree. This man was also a part of a very select group of people who had interacted with the G-Man, an entity that was known to use humanity as pawns in his secret plan. What was the real story behind the man that ran New Little Odessa? What connection did he have to the G-Man? And why was he disliked in secret by the rest of the Resistance? Here, we explore in the lore and story behind Colonel Odessa Cubbage. The early years of Colonel Odessa Cubbage's life are unknown. His actions, stories, questionable accent, and outfit all told one story to the rebels he watched over. There were, however, many in his ranks that questioned who he truly was, and how much of what he claimed was, in fact, true. After the Combine invaded Earth, it appeared that Odessa escaped the Combine sweeps of major populated areas, and he found himself in Eastern Europe. Here, he came across what was a small seaside community, New Little Odessa. This was the perfect place to evade the Combine. It was just small enough to evade the detection of this army, and it was close enough to a highway to traverse across the country if required. Over the years of Combine occupation, a resistance was formed and bases were set up across the wasteland to build up this rebellion, in which Colonel Odessa Cubbage became one of the military leaders, and New Little Odessa became a base of operations. As more rebels relocated to New Little Odessa, they met Cubbage, but something was off about him. He went by the Colonel, but many suspected he had never served in the military at all. He avoided conflict but barked out orders. Many attempted to figure out where and when he had served to become a colonel. His stories did not make sense. He seemed far too young to have been a Bengal Lancer of the British Army, or to have served with Rudyard Kipling. Even his British accent seemed fake.
Ah, hello. I'll be right with you. NLO to Lighthouse Point. NLO to Lighthouse Point, come in.
As for his colonel status, while many believed he did not serve in the British Army, others have speculated that he was given this title during the 7-Hour War after Earth's armies were decimated and many joined in the fight for humanity. The mystery of Odessa Cubbage is something his rebels thought about often, and while he told tales of his battles, others pieced together his story from what they could see. Odessa often wore a security jacket with the University of Rochester logo emblazoned on it. Therefore, it is more than likely that Odessa was from New York and worked as a security officer at the University of Rochester during the time of the Combine invasion. Following the assault, he escaped and discovered New Little Odessa, in which he took the name Odessa for himself and created a completely new life, accent, and backstory. Regardless of who Colonel Odessa Cubbage really was before the invasion, what mattered during the Uprising was who he was now. New Little Odessa was one of the many important resistance strongholds across the wasteland. This was due to Odessa's management and leadership of his small group of rebels. The main building in this community had 3 floors, a basement in which Odessa communicated with the other outposts, updated his rebels on resistance and Combine activity, and where he trained them on new weaponry and attack strategies. The main floor was a simple living area, and the top floor was mostly unused as a result of a strike that had partially destroyed the ceiling. Another building was home to these rebels as their barracks, and a shed housed their generator, a way to live off the land without alerting the Combine of their presence. In communication with the other outposts, mostly Bridgepoint and Lighthouse Point, these rebels also acquired Combine technology through raids of Combine facilities. Out in the wasteland, antlions were a real hazard, and Combine thumpers were essential to deter them from new Little Odessa. On the other side of this, Highway 17 was the ultimate pathway to the rest of the wasteland. To protect themselves from land-based vehicles, Odessa had a gate installed to prevent unauthorized access. Of course, this was a resistance base out in the open, so guards were stationed around the perimeter to watch out for Combine sweeps, antlions, and potential aid. Cubbage may not have been a military man before the Combine invasion, but he knew how to protect those around him to complete the ultimate goal, the removal of the Combine from Earth. If an attack were to occur, a siren was installed to alert everyone in this small community. While Colonel Odessa Cubbage had formed a strong resistance base, he had also garnered a reputation within the resistance. He was reported to move straight to the basement to safety during conflict. He would give orders to his rebels and claim that he needed to warn the other outposts of Combine activity, while many believed he was simply a coward. This did not stop him from claiming valor and the achievements of his rebels after victory, something that frustrated those around him. Was he truly the idiot that many claimed him to be, or just a very smart man that knew how to survive? The sudden reappearance of Dr. Gordon Freeman was the huge spark that the Resistance needed to truly begin their fight against the Combine. Within New Little Odessa, Colonel Cubbage heard from his superiors that Freeman was the symbol of revolution. The arrival of Freeman also brought chaos too. Shortly after, Black Mesa East was attacked by Combine forces. Freeman had managed to evade the soldiers during this onslaught, but Dr. Eli Vance, one of the leaders of the Resistance, was captured during the raid. Colonel Cubbage did respect his superiors and claimed to those around him that he wished he could help in the rescue mission, but he could not leave the town he had built. Over the following hours, Cubbage was alerted that Freeman was on his way to Nova Prospect and would likely pass through New Little Odessa on his way. The issue, however, was that the Combine were relentless in their pursuit of the scientist. As Cubbage and his rebels waited for Freeman, this military leader was visited by an entity known only as the G-Man. This man was shrouded in mystery. Anyone that had met him had no idea what he or his employer's true intention was. This begged the question: what made Colonel Odessa Cubbage so important that he was chosen by the G-Man to perform some sort of action? The G-Man only used people as pawns. He had met very few people. Dr. Eli Vance had been told to prepare for unforeseen consequences. Dr. Breen was aware of him. Gordon Freeman had been placed in stasis as a new hire, and so had Adrian Shepard. These people had all become pawns in a much grander plan. A plan that even now has not been revealed. This meeting had placed Odessa Cubbage in a group of unlikely heroes. Maybe there was more to Odessa than those around him had realized, but in this moment, the G-Man needed something from him. As Gordon arrived at New Little Odessa, he entered the basement as Odessa relayed to his rebels that a Combine strike was on the way. Gordon had fought against several Combine Overwatch units nearby, and something new was about to arrive. Cubbage had somehow become aware of this strike. It could have been through the Resistance radio network, or the G-Man had warned him. Regardless, Cubbage held in his hand an RPG and explained how to use it and how to take down the Combine gunship on the way. He explained that the RPG was the best way to steer a rocket past the gunship's defenses, as long as the person that wielded the weapon stayed alive long enough to avoid the creature's strikes. They would be rewarded with a prize worthy enough of any mantelpiece. Although he could have taken this opportunity himself, Cubbage instead asked who in the room would be the lucky one to go into combat. With only one RPG, as soon as Cubbage saw Gordon, he offered him the weapon. Shortly after this, the new Little Odessa siren blasted out to alert the residents of this outpost of a strike. As Gordon and his rebels ran outside to take on the gunship, as predicted, Odessa stayed inside and attempted to contact Lighthouse Point. While they did not respond, he still stayed inside and waited. After a loud crash, Gordon returned to the basement and Odessa congratulated him. He was happy to be in the presence of such a force of power and thanked him for his help. Before Gordon left, Cubbage explained to the scientist that he had not heard from another outpost, Bridgepoint, in a while, and he suspected that it had been taken over by Combine units. He also asked that Gordon tell Eli Vance that he regretted not being able to save him himself. As Gordon left, Odessa and his rebels remained in New Little Odessa. Although Gordon and the rebels of New Little Odessa had fought to take down the gunship, the resistance across the wasteland heard a different tale of how this battle had occurred. A tale of how Colonel Odessa Cubbage had taken down a Combine gunship. Only those who had witnessed this event would be able to correct this blatant lie, but that was Odessa. The fate of Colonel Odessa Cubbage is currently unknown. Not too long after Gordon left this little resistance stronghold, Nova Prospect exploded and Gordon Freeman and Alex Vance were believed to be dead. With the symbol of revolution gone, the resistance finally decided to take back City 17 and fight the Combine. The population of New Little Odessa would have been close enough to join this fight. However, with Odessa's track record of blurring the line between truth and fiction, and his ability to evade dangerous situations, it is likely that he also avoided this battle. Having done so, he probably told a few tales of his actions during the Uprising of City 17 and the fall of the Citadel. New Little Odessa may have survived the fall of the Citadel, but its population may have left for White Forest with the rest of the resistance. Yet, Colonel Odessa Cubbage was not spotted there. His fate may be unknown, but with his ability to survive, he is likely out there, somewhere. This was a much shorter episode than usual. I wanted to cover something fairly interesting while I worked on the next timeline. It is a lot of work and I am so excited to share it with you. I will either post it next week or the week after. Odessa Cubbage is absolutely one of the most mysterious characters in the Half-Life series. The G-Man clearly is the most, but Cubbage is a close second. I always had an off feeling about him. His accent was interesting, but I tried not to think too much about it. But then I found a little blurb about him in the Half-Life 2 Prima guides, and it solidified my thoughts. Personally, I do believe that Odessa firstly took his name from the town of New Little Odessa. I believe he was an American that lived in New York as he worked security during the Combine invasion. The invasion may have also been the perfect opportunity to reinvent himself to become the person he wanted to be. I am kind of with this, be who you want to be. It was just a shame that the rebels he watched over saw through his lies. There is also the possibility that he was telling the truth. Unlikely though. His relationship with the G-Man is also interesting. I mentioned it in the video, but very few people that we have seen have had an interaction with the G-Man. He pushed Breen to perform the experiment that led to the resonance cascade. He warned Eli of unforeseen consequences. He saved Alex when she was a child because he believed she would be important in the future. And he detained both Gordon Freeman and Adrian Shepard for a similar reason. For Odessa Cubbage to have been contacted by this entity, it must mean that he was important in a crucial event in whatever plan he and his employers had. It could have just been that he needed Cubbage to help Gordon survive the gunship attack, or there could have been more to it. As of now, I truly believe that there is more to Odessa Cubbage than what we have seen. That was everything I wanted to say. This was the lore and story behind Colonel Odessa Cubbage, an international man of mystery. If you enjoyed this, then give it a like, and if you really enjoyed it, then consider subscribing for more content like this. If you dislike this, then give it a dislike. I appreciate you watching anyway. As always, thank you to my gold tier patrons and channel members who got access to this video a little bit early. Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Orin X, Azu Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis, and Blaze of Glory. What did you think of your brief interaction with Odessa? What do you think he spoke to the G-Man about? And what would you like to see next time? This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.